We are in chapter 12. Chapter 12 of Job. And Zophar he's been probably one of the harshest counselors of Job. He was very black and white and blunt and harsh with what he said to Job. And how would you describe Job up to this point? Was he firing back at them, or was he just kind of taking it? It seems to me he was in such a, I don't know the word to even use. Everything was so upside down in his life at this time. He really didn't know what to do. I mean, he complained to the Lord. He wanted the Lord to speak to him. And he was struggling so bad that when his friends would tell him things, he would try some to get his point across, but it just seemed like he didn't have it in him to get out what it was that he wanted to get out. But chapter 12 here, Job starts to address Zophar and his attacks on him. And we're going to see that in verses 1 through 12. And then verses 13 to 15, he's going to be talking about God's greatness. So let's start out in chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. And it says, I want you to really pay attention here. This is why I mentioned that it seemed like Job is in a different state right now. Then Job answered and said, "No doubt you are the people, and wisdom will die with you." Who is putting the jabs out now? Job kind of, I put down, he hits back here. I know last week Levi commented, those are fighting words when Zophar said something, I don't remember what it was. Where's that at? I wrote it down, I thought. Anyway, where he compared him to a donkey. I mean, Zophar was just downright mean. And Job here is kind of throwing it back at him to help him to see. Job here tells his know-it-all friends in verses 1 and 2, he said, well, when you guys die, who's going to tell people what to do? All the wisdom is going to die with you, he says. Now, is that true? No. Where does wisdom come from to start with? It comes from God, comes from His Word. So, Job is being sarcastic, but I don't think his friends were. But when he says there's going to be no one left to tell people how to live, I wonder if that made him think just a little bit. But he knew that wisdom came from God. And again, I think something that we can learn from this is many times, I'm going to say we, but I know me, we think we know what's taking place, when in reality, we don't know everything that's happening. We don't know what's going through people's hearts and minds or what they're facing. We don't know how God is working maybe in that situation. So we need to be careful to not be like his counselors and try and act like we know everything and that when we die, wisdom's going to go with us. We just need to be careful of that. Then, verses 3 and 4 of chapter 12 says, Job says here, I have understanding as well as you. I am not inferior to you. Indeed, who does not know such things as these? I am mocked by his friends who called on God, and he answered him, the just and blameless who is ridiculed. the phrase that Job uses, well, he starts out by saying, I'm not inferior to you. I have walked with the Lord too. I have lived some life. I understand some things. And then in verse 4, he brings up at the end, the last phrase, the just and blameless who is ridiculed. Where did we first hear this in the book of Job, and who said it about him? He was just and blameless. God said it, and it was at the very first of chapter 1. He told Satan, have you considered my servant Job? He is just and blameless, an upright man. So, when Job says that about himself, he's not gloating. He's not saying something that's untrue. He's not saying that he is sinless, but he is just answering them honestly here. Then in verse 5, it says, a lamp is despised in the thought of one who is at ease. It is made ready for those whose feet slip. What does the Bible say that a lamp is to a believer when they're walking through life? A lamp to our feet and a light unto our path, right? It's showing us where we should go. So this example here in verse 5, he says this lamp is despised in the one who's at ease. If you're not going through anything and everything's just perfect and you don't have any problems, you feel like, well, I don't need that lamp. And many times I think we as believers, when we're comfortable, I think that's a good word to use. Is it easy to not pray, not spend time in the Word, just think, hey, I got this, things are great? It is. So when he says a lamp is despised by the one who is at ease, that's kind of what he's describing. And then the next phrase, it is made ready for those whose feet slip. So when we're struggling, like Job was struggling, he needed a lamp. He needed a light to direct him. Now, had the Lord spoke to him yet? He hadn't, had he? He just kind of left him hanging up to this point. But Job is saying, you guys, you friends of mine, you counselors, you're telling me that you cannot suffer unless there's sin in your life. Is that true? It's not, is it? But remember back, Job is an old book written way early when things started being written. And that was kind of the belief of some of the Old Testament people back in that day. But it's wrong. And it's only who that can know what's going on in our life. It's not your friends. It's God. So Job is trying to get across to them that there may become a day that they'll be in his shoes and they need strength and counseling. Would they want someone coming to him, attacking him like they have done to him? And in verse 6, another proof, you might say, of what he's saying. Then tents and robbers prosper, and those who provoke God are secure. Okay, robbers, illegal people, people in government that are wicked, people in business that are wicked. I mean, you could put in all kinds of things. Do they prosper a lot of times? Sure they do. The last phrase there, in what God provides by his hand. Turn back to Matthew 5. Matthew 5. Now we know Job didn't have Matthew 5 now, but he knew this. Matthew 5, verse 45. Matthew 5 and verse 45. Partway through the verse there, it starts out, you may be sons of your Father in heaven. And then it says, He makes His sun, not S-O-N, S-U-N, rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust. There's, I shouldn't have turned back. There is grace. God has, let me find this again. This verse here, what it says about God provides even for the unjust, God's love and mercy and grace extends even to His enemies. But there's a difference between that and the everlasting love that God has for those who know His name. So when we see folks who are not living right, they're living wicked lives, they're doing illegal things, and it's like, why do they have it so good? It's temporary. God is not mocked. He is going to take care of that at some point. But God shows mercy and even provides good things to evil people. So what he's getting across here, so when his friends were accusing, well, it has to be sin in your life because you're not prospering and you're suffering. No, it doesn't have to be. So their wisdom in that was not true. Now we come to verses 7 and 8. Job here, and I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but he steps it up a notch with his sarcasm as he's addressing his friends who have came to encourage him. Verses 7 and 8. But now ask the beasts, and they will teach you, and the birds of the air, and they will tell you, or speak to the earth, and it will teach you, and the fish of the sea will explain to you. If you are seeking wisdom, seeking direction about something, are you going to go to animals or birds or fish or it says the earth? You go out and talk to a pile of dirt to ask for direction? No. What did Zophar use to really hammer Job? In that verse, he said, you will gain wisdom when a donkey's foal comes out as a man. Job remembered that. He said this back in 11 verse 12. That's what he was referring to. Zophar insulted Job with this donkey scenario. So Job tells him, well, go ask the animals. They are wiser than you. It seems that Job has a little fire in him now. Before he was just so weak and beat down that he didn't seem to have that. So it seems like he's changing a little bit here. Then verses 9 through 11. 9 to 11 of chapter 12 says, who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this, in whose hand is the life of every living thing and the breath of all mankind? Now he is throwing a jab at his counselors here, but what else is he doing? He keeps bringing up God and His strength and His power all the way through all of this. And there's sections which we're going to see when he focuses completely on the strength and power of God. But he says, who does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? Can God do that to a good person? Allow it to happen, I should say. Yes, He can. And He did here. And he goes on to say, every living thing and the breath of all mankind comes from the hand of God. Job says that it's evident to everyone that what is happening is God's will, except these three men who came to help him through this. He says, friends, you can go find anyone or anything for that matter and get the truth. I mean, he's putting it pretty low. Just go find something. And you'll find more truth than what you've been giving to me. Verse 12 of chapter 12 says, wisdom is with aged men, and with the length of days, understanding. Now, is that true? Do we hear it in other places in the Bible? That it mentions numerous times about how as we grow older, we can become wiser, aged. It says the white-haired. Yeah. So, are Job's counselors like 20-year-olds? We don't know for sure, but I don't think so. Not the way he's talking about him here. I'm sorry, but I'm kind of enjoying Job waking up and kind of bringing them to their senses. But back up and look at verse 11 again. It says, did I read? I did skip 11. Well, we'll put it in right now and we'll combine it with 12. Does not the ear test words? So what does that mean? Testing words with your ears. How would you describe that? Breaking down the meaning. Listen first. Sometimes we don't like to do that. Listen first and then discern. Get the meaning. Understand it. So listen first and then think about it. And the last part of 11, and the mouth taste its food. So when you taste food, what's the first sensation that comes to you when you put something in your mouth? There's several things, but what would you think of first? Well, temperature, taste, texture. But if you don't like the taste, you're not going to... If it's good or not. Yeah. Yeah. So, he's using kind of simple examples there to tell them, does not the ear test words and the mouth taste food? With wisdom should come from aged men, length of days. He's humiliating them. I don't know if they got it right away, but he's telling his friends that when you hear something, you need to discern if it's the truth. And when you taste something, you figure out if it's good. So when you're listening, figure out if it is truth, if it's good. And then, shouldn't aged men have wisdom? It's like, you guys have white hair. You have lots of years behind you. You should have wisdom. But at the start of 12, he says, all these other things have more wisdom than you. He did not hold back here.
He's kind of like, look like you should be wise. You should
Yeah. So, at the end of verse 12, this is kind of the end of Job venting and trying to wake up his counselors to understand what they're saying is not correct and what it has done to him. He's going to switch from that to showing his reverence to the God that he loves and serves. And I already mentioned it here, but doesn't it seem like Job has turned the corner with his struggles and he's finding a little more hope, seeing a little bit of a glimmer of light at the end of this, maybe starting to get his head wrapped around of what's maybe taking place? He still has not heard from God, but he has not given up on God. So let's look at verse 13 of chapter 12. With him are wisdom and strength. He has counsel and understanding. He is speaking of God here. There's 4 words I want us to notice in verse 13. I keep getting in the wrong chapter. Wisdom, strength, counsel, and understanding. God has these things. Can man have these things as well? Not as well as God, but we can, right? It comes with age. It comes from staying close to the Lord. It comes from being in His Word. It comes from all of those things. But these were attributes that Job's friends needed. So, do you think when they came, they heard about what Job was going through and they traveled a distance? You got to hand it to him for being willing to put out that much energy and travel that far and to be there. But do you think they asked God to help them as they sought to encourage Job? It doesn't appear that they did. It doesn't appear that they did. So, if they would have asked, if we ask God for things like this, is He going to point us in the right direction? And we know when we ask, a lot of things we can find right here in God's Word. And it's like, okay, this is what it says. This is the direction I'll go. Or this is the direction I won't go. Or be still and know. Wait for Him to give you direction in your paths. So, Job is thankful for God and what He has done. 14 through 16. If he breaks a thing, he's speaking about God here. He says, if he breaks a thing down, it cannot be rebuilt. If he imprisons a man, there can be no release. If he withholds the waters, they dry up. If he sends them out, they overwhelm the earth. With him are strength and prudence. The deceived and the deceiver are his. What attribute about God is Job talking about here? What is that showing about God? It's His strength, isn't it? He's showing God's strength. If He breaks something down, or He can bring rain, He can stop rain, He can flood everything. There's nothing He can't do. God is a big God. He's strong. He's able to do anything. And then verses 17 to 25, Job is going to talk about things God can do and show His sovereignty. We can apply this part, we can apply any of it to our nowadays, but just think about how we can apply what we're going to read to what we're seeing now in our world. It says, He leads counselors away plundered. He makes fools of the judges. He loosens the bonds of kings and binds their waist with a belt. He leads princes away plundered and overthrows the mighty. He deprives the trusted ones of speech and takes away the discernment of the elders. He pours contempt on princes and disarms the mighty. He uncovers deep things out of darkness and brings the shadow of death to light. He makes nations great, and he also destroys them. He enlarges nations and guides them. He takes away the understanding of the chiefs of the people of the earth and makes them wander in a pathless wilderness. They grope in the dark without light, and he makes them stagger like a drunken man. So God sets up kingdoms, he takes down kingdoms. He sets up leaders, he takes down leaders. Now, just to apply that to us, does that mean, okay, if God's going to put into elected positions, whoever he's going to put in, do we just stay home and not do anything? No. As believers, we should be doing our part when it comes to electing people. Now, is the ones we want always going to get in? No, because God is the one who sets them up and takes them down. So he can take down nations. He can set up nations. Think back to Israel when they needed to take the promised land, when they finally obeyed and he got them headed towards the promised land. Were they outnumbered at times? Yeah. Did God on purpose have them send less military men than they needed? He did, to show his power and his glory. And maybe not everyone likes President Trump, but you look at what they tried to do to him, and you're telling me that it was coincidence that that bullet just went through the edge of his ear from a very accurate rifle? I mean, he is a man, and our hope and faith is not in a man, it's not in a government, but this tells us that God sets up people and he takes down people, and it's for his will and his purpose. So God, maybe at times we get to the point where we think God is just sitting passively around, doing nothing, sipping his coffee. But that's not true. God knows everything that is going on, and he is active, and he is in control. Now, our finite minds cannot even picture this, that he knows everything that's going on around our globe. We can't even fathom that. But he's in control. And eventually, when we go to here in the Bible, we see he has a plan. And it will come about in his time. Now, chapter 13. Chapter 13. Job, to start with here, still has a few things that he wants to say to his counselors. Verse 13, 1 and 2. Says, "Behold, my eye has seen all of this. My ear has heard and understood it. What you know, I also know. I am not inferior to you." Job lets his friends know here there's a little bit of fire coming back in him. He lets them know that he's not intimidated by them. And it's not that he's better than them. It's just that he knows there is not some horrendous sin in his life that is causing what's going on. And he said, it came from God's hand, and it is his will. So he's letting them know that he's not some dummy, I guess, to put it bluntly. Then in verses 3 to 5, it says, "But I would speak to the Almighty, and I desire to reason with God. But you forgers of lies, you are worthless physicians. Oh, that you would be silent, and it would be your wisdom." So he's saying, man, if you guys would just shut up and quit spewing this stuff, you would be wise. because they're not using wisdom when they do this. Job did not hold back here in scolding his, what did he call them? Forgers of lies. Worthless physicians. He scolded them that they were continually accusing him of being a wicked sinner. He did not hold back here. He just let it all go. In verses 6 through 12, I can see, as we start to read this, I can see Job here, like I did here a week or two ago when I tried to imitate Zophar. It was just bellowing what he was saying to Job. I can see Job here pointing his blistered, itching finger at his counselors when he says this. It says, "Now hear my reasoning and heed the pleadings of my lips." I can just see him doing that. "Will you speak wickedly for God and talk deceitfully for him?" Well, let's stop here for just a second. This is the part I kind of understand it, but it was hard for me to wrap my head around it. He accused them of using lies and falsehoods to vindicate God. He's trying to stick up for God. I think I'm getting this right, that he is punishing Job for sin. That is his counselors' thoughts. That is the direction they've been going, that they're sticking up for God. And Job is the one on the wrong side. So when they asserted that Job was a sinner, was because he was suffering, that was not true. He's saying, you guys are thinking you know what God knows, and you don't. Now, this thought goes on here in verse 8. "Will you show partiality for him," speaking of God? "Will you contend for God?" Will you contend for God? Will you stick up for him? Job is saying here, are you wise enough to argue God's defense, in God's defense, like being a lawyer in a court setting? Are you wise enough to argue for God? Job is saying, that's a little bit out of your league. They weren't in that lane, shouldn't have been in that lane. And it's kind of brash to think that they really could prove that they knew why Job was suffering to God. And Job goes on to say, you need to fear what you're saying, because God will chastise when you take things into your own hands instead of seeking what God has. Verse 9, "Will it be well when he searches you out? Or can you mock him as one who mocks man?" So that's where he's telling you need to be careful here, because God is going to see your heart, your mind, your thoughts, and He will surely rebuke you if you secretly show partiality. "Will not his excellence make you afraid, and the dread of him fall upon you?" Now verse 12. "Your platitudes are proverbs of ashes. Your defenses are defenses of clay." What's a platitude? What's that?
It's a fish.
Yeah. Come on, Mark. Different letters at the end. He's telling them that their words are ineffective and they're worthless. They're trying to help him feel better. And the things that they've been saying, he says, these are just worthless platitudes, trying just like frosting on the cake maybe. And he says they're worthless. Ashes, clay. they're just, there's not much to it. Anyway, Job, I'm enjoying Job finally getting his a little bit of strength back here, it seems to be. Job is trying to tell his friends that someday they could be in his shoes, and what they were telling him was worthless. It was not helpful. Verses 13 to 19 of chapter 13 here. He says, "Hold your peace with me and let me speak. Then let come on me what may. Why do I take my flesh in my teeth and put my life in my hands? Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Even so I will defend my own ways before him." We're going to come back to verse 15 because there's a lot to that. Verse 16, "He also shall be my salvation, for a hypocrite could not come before him. Listen carefully to my speech and to my declaration with your ears. See now, I have prepared my case. I know that I shall be vindicated. Who is he who will contend with me?" I'll end here. We'll just go back to verse 15 and look at that, and then we'll stop for today. Verse 15, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." Think back to the beginning when Satan showed up at that heavenly meeting with the angels, and Jesus brought up, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And what did Satan say to him? I will be able to break him down. He will curse you to your face and die. So clear up to this point, Job has never went too far. He's never denied God. He's never said, "I'm not going to trust you." He has complained. He has poured his heart out to him. Who won this? I wrote down a bet. That's not what it should be called, but I couldn't come up with a word. Who won between God and Satan here? Verse 15. What did it say? "Though he slay me, yet I will trust him." God won right here. He says, "I know this is for a reason. I know it's your will. But even if you slay me, I am going to trust you." He's went through a lot. And I think often about folks who are facing huge issues in their life, no matter what it is, health, family things, job, whatever it is. And I think often about, if I'm in that situation, would I be handling it that way? Would I say, "No matter what, Lord, I will still trust you"? And I think as we grow, we will. We may go through times in our walk with God where we complain. We say, "God, show me the reason," or asking for things that maybe we don't need to know right at that time. But as we continue to grow in our walk with God and in our faith, and we stay close to Him, we too can do what Job did in verse 15. Though things are tough, though I don't see a way out of this, it's going to change things in my life immensely, I'm going to trust you. Because ultimately, it's His will, and He will work things out. So it's just something that we can learn there. All right, we will pick up in this spot next week and continue on, but anybody have something that came up that they want to share that didn't come out?
Well, I think what you said there, he slayed me. I mean, Job is looking out what we see from the faith, love him and are called according to his purpose. It's the same thing.
Right.
Sickness, health, whatever it may be, good, bad,
Yeah.
evil, all things work together for the good of those who love and called according to his purpose. The question is, are we living for the dock, which is this where we are now, this temporal world, or living for the lunch, which goes on forever, which is for eternity? That's what
Right.
And God is working all this together for the good of those who love Him. All is working for Him.
Yeah.
That's what Job said.
Yep.
I would trust Him. So
Yep. And
we did the same thing.
can God use something we did, we said, how we handled a situation long after we're gone? People will see it. Maybe they'll have a situation. They'll remember something you said, something you did, how you reacted, how you handled horrible situation in your life. That's why Job's friends are so off base, thinking they know what's happened in Job's life. All right. Jason, would you close in prayer this morning, please?